Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the 8-Bit Adventures Podcast. This is episode 241. That's right, 241 episodes of this weekly podcast. I'm your host, Sean Hayes, and we've got a lot of bad decisions or just poor decision-making from video game companies this week, folks. So strap in, because wow, we've got some doozies. Activision Blizzard once again in the news, so it's of course off to a great start, and it really doesn't get much better than that. So yeah, hope you all are doing okay. Hope everyone's doing fine. I am on the mend from last week, although we got a notice from daycare that someone tested positive for strep, so that's great. So I will keep you all posted if that will impact any future podcast episodes. So all right. Yeah. Why don't we get right into our quickfire news, shall we? All right, to start things off, Nintendo, the Big N, is closing its Redwood, California, and Toronto, Ontario offices, which are primarily involved in sales and marketing. They're not the respective headquarters. For the US and Canada, they are moving most of those positions to the respective headquarters. That said, it's estimated about 100 employees are reported to be displaced from the Redwood office. Like, some of them are being offered jobs up in Redmond, Washington, which they may or may not be able to take if, because they would have to relocate, from California to, from, I think it's Northern California to Washington State. But those that can't will be offered severance packages. Still, this is a bit of a head scratcher as to why Nintendo's deciding to close those offices. Now, I don't know how many of the positions will be able to be remote, because that would certainly have a big impact. They also mentioned cutting back, I forget what they're called, but basically like teams that go out to like physical locations for like sales and marketing purposes, like mainly to game stores and stuff. So the rise in digital sales is having an impact on that, because if they're not distributing to as many storefronts, which GameStop's slow demise is playing into that as well. But yeah, all in all, this will result in job losses. Not great, especially considering, the Switch is still like an immensely selling console. Although there was also a report that Nintendo is scaling back production on it due to chip shortages. So talked about that before, Samsung mentioning that there was going to be chip shortages, and resource shortages potentially well into 2023. That's going to affect production. We're going to see it with the Switch. So, and potentially whether there is a Pro Switch model, on the horizon. So yeah. All right. As promised, Activision Blizzard, here we go. First off, no BlizzCon for 2022. I don't think anybody expected a BlizzCon for 2022 with the massive upheaval that's taking place. Activision CEO Bobby Kotick will take a massive pay cut until the board feels certain, quote, diversity, equity, and inclusion goals are met for the company, end quote. Which, you might think, yeah, good on Bobby Kotick, pay cut from, several $1 million to like $62,000 a year. However, earlier this year, shareholders approved a $155 million pay package. So this is kind of one of those scenarios where, there's already income coming in. So like, it doesn't affect him that much really. So this is like a very performative gesture. World Warcraft will also have a community council, which is composed of basically members of the community, of the player base, who apply to be on the council and are then selected by Blizzard These will deliver feedback and thoughts on behalf of the community to inform game development. There is all sorts of backlash on this, given that, they would likely be handpicked, that it might just end up being like elite players that don't actually represent, most of the casual audience. That, this, like, back when the team was, more active on the forums, they would just get feedback directly from the forums, and like you could tell like what was quality feedback and not. So yeah, not well received. And then to cap things off, so I had previously announced on the previously reported on the podcast, Blizzard was going to be have like 2 leads, Mike Ibarra and Jen O'Neill. Jen O'Neill and tech lead Amy Dunham are just out. They're leaving the company. They are, for whatever reason, they do not wish to be at Blizzard anymore. I don't think it's any bit of a stretch to guess why, perhaps. But yeah. So Jen O'Neill, former lead of Vicarious Visions, which is based out of Albany, New York. So a bit of a local game developer here, game dev studio, bought up by Blizzard, and then she was made sort of one of the head lead members at Blizzard, as sort of like a compensation for that. And it's kind of decided, nope, she's out. So, nice job, Activision Blizzard. You're really really handling things well. Facebook is rebranding itself, or its parent company. So Facebook is now going to become a product of Meta. So much in the same way that Google as a company is owned by Alphabet. So Meta is what the Facebook company was previously. So like Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp will now be products owned by Meta. Mark Zuckerberg wants to push VR as a social space and interconnection of networks. So like basically, Zuckerberg thinks like the next evolution of sort of the internet space is going to be virtual reality, and really wants to like transition social networking and events and media into the metaverse. Sort of think of like a high concept is sort of the Oasis in Ready Player One. Obviously, we don't have that capability yet. It would be it's something more like of what they thought VR was going to do years ago, where it's like, oh, this movie will be available in VR, and like when you boot up the app or whatever, like you can select that movie and you could watch it with your friends in VR, like even if you're away from each other, like over an internet network, but like you could all be sitting, quote unquote, in the same virtual room, quote unquote, next to each other. So like cool ideas, but it's Facebook. And it's Mark Zuckerberg. So yeah. Also weird infinity like lungs symbol. I don't know if it's supposed to be like an infinity M, but all it makes me think of is a pair of lungs, and it's like, I don't know. But yeah, this comes, largely on the heels of all of the sort of backlash against Facebook for all of the bad behavior reported on by whistleblowers. So keep that in mind if you want to join some sort of virtual reality space owned by the social media company. All right, next up. So this is perhaps the only piece of positive news that I had this week. And even then, it's like not super, like it's kind of neutral. So Animal Crossing Happy Home Paradise will be Animal Crossing New Horizons only paid DLC. And it will, but that means it will also be its final content update. Like it'll be the only large scale content update. So like 2.0 is launching the same day. And like that'll be it. However, a Nintendo spokesperson did report that the game will still be updated with, quote, small changes. So whether that means, excuse me, like single events or minor tweaks, so perhaps things like the inclusion of like the Mario items. So I don't know, maybe they do something for like include like just throw in a bunch of like Metroid items or Zelda items or something. Maybe a little crossover stuff, but like no big content updates in the future. This will be the final one and the only paid DLC, which is weird because like the way they phrased it in the reveal trailer made it sound like that there might be more paid DLC in the future. So I don't know. All right, Amazon's MMO New World. So what I'm reporting on has supposedly been fixed, but I'm going to report on it still. There was an HTML exploit in the game's chat system. So I'm going to try and break this down as simply as I can. So basically, the way the game was built was somehow they built it in such a way that you could use HTML and enter it into the chat, and that would let you run code in the game. That would let you do things like place image, like just place straight up images in the chat. But some nefarious people figured out that it would allow you to kick other people from the game. Now, this game has a large PvP component to it, so that's kind of a big deal. Also, things included like if you played in window mode, while you dragged the window around, you were invincible due to how something worked. This exploit also let you duplicate gold, which is a huge problem in any sort of MMO, which prompted Amazon to shut down all currency transfer services. So this meant like trading. This meant like its version of like guild purchases or guild banking or transferring, between members or whatever. It also shut down the game's version of the auction house. So just nothing possible. That led to another gold exploit where people were able to like once again duplicate gold. Supposedly everything's been fixed. Big mess though. Absolute big mess. Now, from what I understand and have read about this is because like a large portion of the game is done client side as opposed to server side, and everybody who does like any sort of networking and especially like like server management and like online game dev is really scratching their heads as to why Amazon, who has an entire service based on web servers, would go this route of having stuff be client side, because having a game be based on clients, having like an MMO or any sort of multiplayer game be based on client side makes it rife for exploits like this. So it's just like who's working on this game? Like, it's just so it doesn't bode well. And pointing out that like the engine that was used to build this game was supposed to be used for a bunch of other games, and all those games have been scrapped. So, that said, from what I've seen and from what I hear, game, aside from that weird stuff, it's pretty fun. Seems to be very single player friendly and everything. It's just a lot of head scratching decisions as to why you would build the game in such a way that like it would be easily exploitable like that. Now, as I said, supposedly as of today, all that stuff's been fixed. So this is just, be on the lookout for things like that if you decide to pick up this game. So, all right. Last up for quickfire news, Ubisoft. Ubisoft in the news once again, right off the heels of their own sort of harassment lawsuits. They have said they will plan to integrate blockchain technology and non-fungible tokens into future game projects. So this has become a very controversial topic of late, of just cryptocurrency and crypto technology. seemed like for a while everybody was in on it, and and it would be a good way to do like digital rights and stuff like that, like for copyright, and that like by doing that you could potentially like remove, like it would make copyright and stuff easier, that you could remove a lot of these sort of very frustrating measures that have to be taken. But that said, we live in an age now where crypto farming is like a large environmental hazard, just because of the amount of power that it requires. And to do large scale operations, you are drawing huge amounts of power, and releasing a lot of carbon emissions. So yeah, again, I there is a small minority of people who are happy about this, and interestingly, this means that you won't be able to get Ubisoft games on Steam because of Steam's block on games featuring NFTs and blockchain technology. So yeah, I guess you'll just be able to find them on Epic, which I think Ubisoft might even just not be on Steam at this point anyway. So whether that hurts them or not, I don't know. But yeah, that's gonna wrap up our quickfire questionable news of this week. As I said, it was not a great week for news. You know what? Here's a bonus item. I forgot to put it in the notes, and it just sort of popped up today. Marvel's Eternals releases this week, so go check that out. Apparently it's got mixed reviews from critics, which like apparently it's like one of the lowest critically reviewed Marvel films. I have to say I don't know how I feel about that, because it's a Marvel film. So, are critics getting Marvel fatigue at this point? It was getting review bombed by users who can't see the film. And let's say, no, largely users that have qualms against LGBTQ representation, or claiming that Marvel is too woke, quote unquote, for films, and that it is ruining the industry. So they review bombed it. Trying to get it like a poor rating on IMDb before the film even came out. So, my hope is to be able to go see this. At the end of the day, like, here's the thing: the only reviews that I saw that seemed very controversial or whatever, I later looked up. I thought, wait a minute, there's a certain tone that leads me to think these reviews are a bit suspect. And sure enough, when looking up sort of the bias of the websites, pretty biased, politically. So, yeah. So, worst case scenario, like, it would be like the Thor movies or Age of Ultron, is even what those outrageous reviews were purporting. Age of Ultron had problems. A lot of the problems stem largely from it being Joss Whedon. The Thor films, like, they're fine. I mean, they're not the best Marvel movies, but like, not every Marvel movie can be the best Marvel. Like, not every Marvel movie can be Thor Ragnarok. It just, you can't. Like, at some point there's gonna be a hierarchy, and I'm still pretty confident that it could be a fun film. So, I'll have to see. I'm willing to go in and check it out and report back. We'll see if we can make that happen. Just because it's hard to make movie plans with the kiddo, because we have to I either have to go alone or we have to like get a babysitter. So, all right. So that is going to wrap up our quickfire news. So let's do our deep dive. All right. So I want to talk about Skul the Hero Slayer. I played this a bunch for my Hollow streams. So this is doing a little bit of a game review. So Skul the Hero Slayer is sort of, it's not quite a platformer. Like it does have some platforming elements in that like you can jump, you can double jump. And like there's platforms, but like it's not a platformer in like the sense that like Mario, that like Mario is. It's more of just like that there's jumping elements that exist in the game. It is sort of an action roguelike. And it doesn't even really have RPG elements. It's more just roguelike elements. Where you play as a little skull dude who is on a mission to save the Demon King, who is whose kingdom is under attack by human forces. Now, right off the bat, they kind of establish human kingdom, like there's something going on. Like it's not just you are playing bad guys and you're taking out the humans, because like that's been a thing that's been explored in games. This is sort of like it just happens to be a kingdom of monsters, and these humans, like they're kind of bad guys. Like they're not good by any stretch of imagination. And like whether, but like it seems like it's like a lot of the human leadership is not good, and they're just like they're using a narrative to push their forces out into monster kingdoms to take them over. And so there's a lot of the mini bosses you fight are based on hero archetypes. So wizard, priest, rogue, fighter, and so they may not realize that they're caught up in some sort of evil mission, and they just see, oh, a skeleton, we must vanquish the monster. So there's that going on. Now the core gameplay is you can pop off your skull and attach other skulls, which grant you different abilities. So it does a little bit of like job class changing. So you put on a werewolf skull, you turn into like a skeletal werewolf, and that affects like the type of like basic attacks that you do, as well as like what special abilities that you get. And each skull has like a list of abilities that it can get that's randomly assigned. And there's like different rarities of skulls. You can equip 2 skulls, and like you can swap between the 2, and each skull has its own special thing for what happens when you swap into it / out of it. So like swapping is a mechanic that they introduce. So there's your skills, there's swapping, and then there's also like items that you can pick up. So there are 2 kinds of items. There are sort of like trinkets, which give you a passive effect based on the trinket, and then each trinket has like 2 set skills attached to it. Now those skills have ranks that you can then, like, by getting more trinkets that have the same skill, you rank it up and it gets better and better. And each of those skills has a thing that it does. So for example, there might be a piece of armor that reduces damage you take by 15%. And it might also have like bulwark. I can't remember a lot of the names of the skills, so just bear with me. So like bulwark and endurance, and bulwark might be that when you take damage is reduced to you by a scaling percentage for X number of seconds. And endurance might be just like increases max HP by a certain amount, like by a certain scaling amount. And so then, like, if you pick up another trinket that also has endurance, like it increases the amount of HP that you get. Uh, so there's that. So those are trinkets that you can pick up, and then there's also this item called Quintessence. So Quintessence is like a big castable summon that you can get. Uh, and this is on like a long cooldown. We'll do some kind of big showy effect. Typically, there are some that do like other weird little effects. So some of my favorite ones are like there's a magical turret that it summons a turret that shoots magical bolts that like go all the way across the screen. Will hit the first enemy that it comes into contact with. Yada yada yada. When it like successfully makes 300 attacks, it automatically upgrades into the King's turret, which is currently bugged on Switch at the moment, and I sounds like on other consoles as well. It's supposed to continue firing blasts, and then before it leaves, does like a giant laser effect. It's still very cool regardless. And then Kobold is another one. So what it does is it summons Kobold. Kobold hits everything with in a very short radius with a pickaxe. And then if it, defeats an enemy when it does that, has a 30% chance of turning them into a gold vein, which you can mine for gold coins. There's gold that you use to buy stuff throughout your adventure. And then there's a couple currencies related to things, namely like for items that you can pick up, or for like in between adventures for permanent upgrades that you can get. So so the roguelike element there is that like you will die. That's just a given. And then you are gradually empowering your character over time. So things like you're just increasing basic attack damage. You might reduce your swap cooldown. You might reduce your quintessence cooldown. You might buff your magic damage, critical hit rate, all this other stuff. And really where this gets interesting is when you start picking up enough of these upgrades, you're making it further and further in. And you are able to do things like upgrade your skull, which like might give it additional passive abilities. It might like increase its attack power a little bit. And like it visually evolves your character. And then it's a lot of a feedback loop of you are going through these areas. At the end of an area, you will have 1 to 2 options of rooms that you can go into. Now some rooms might guarantee that you get a trinket. Some might guarantee that you get gold. Some might guarantee that you are able to pick up another skull, or turn that skull into upgrade material. Things like that. So it's just, for me, it's the combination of like job switching and building up like a build based on trinkets, and then picking up a quintessence and just like learning how to do different things with different skulls. It's so much fun. I really enjoy this game. This is an indie title. It's like $20. I think it's available Steam, PlayStation. I think it's available on all platforms. And it's got a really nice, cute little pixel art style. I highly recommend it. But it's tough. Like, don't get me wrong, it is tough. So, and I mean, I've gotten pretty far with like a really good build, only to find out that like I went into a boss fight, with less health than I should have. That I wasn't as careful as I should have been, wasn't paying attention to my health, lost too much health, went into the boss fight, and I just didn't have enough health to make it all the way through the fight. And that's how it goes. And it's like, it's interesting in that for me, it's not a game that feels frustrating. And this is something that I've been thinking about a lot. Since essentially I gave up on Pokemon Unite. Like, I'm not playing that game anymore. Because like there's a lot of frustration involved in that game and other team-based games. But like knowing that, like, number one, it's just fun to play, and it's like what makes it fun is you go back through and you're building a build, and it like ends up typically being really easy to get a good build going. Um, and it's like, you could decide, if you get item rooms, to just pick item rooms and get trinkets. And here's the other thing is like you're not locked into those trinkets or that quintessence or those skulls. You can switch them out, to get new ones. And it often becomes a choice like later on is it's like agonizing over, I have these trinkets and everything. Like this one, I don't have any other skills for that. So like they're not doing a whole lot, but it's a really good base ability. Like, do I switch it out for something that's like also got a really good base ability and might have like one or two situational skills that are really good, but like, so, yeah, if you're like me and you like building tech trees, like in video games and in board games and stuff, I highly recommend that you check this game out. Um, it's so much fun, and the graphics have such a charm to them, um, and it's been really interesting trying to find out what the story is, because like I've only gotten up to the second out of 5 chapters, and I haven't been able to beat the second boss. And I won't spoil like what the bosses are, but it's very challenging, and they do like a lot of very interesting mechanics. I will say, so I did post this on TikTok. The boss fights have 2 phases. Okay, so once you whittle down the boss's health bar, it then gets a second health bar. So keep that in mind, because it was quite a shock when I first discovered that. And I already posted on TikTok, so like it's already out there in the public, so I don't mind spoiling that, but it'll help you get success. It might not guarantee that you're going to succeed, but at least you're prepared going into that. So, all right. So yeah, I would ultimately recommend it. Honestly, I would recommend it on Switch so that you can take it with you on the go. Because it's one of the like, you might not have a run that lasts that long. So, you also, I will say, over as you play the game, you do unlock like people that will give you. So in addition to like the permanent upgrades, you will eventually unlock like other like vendors, I want to say, or like other buff people who will like there's a hunter that you unlock in area 1 that like will give you a skull to start with at the beginning of a run. And then like in the next area you'll find like an ogre mage who will give you a trinket that you get at the beginning of a run. So like you gradually are able to find like more and more people who will give you things to start your run with, so that it's giving you more of a chance to succeed on future runs. So and I appreciate that for roguelikes. So yeah. And ultimately it feels less RNG and like less random. Like you could get a bunch of like bad skulls, and you could get a bunch of bad trinkets and stuff, or you could get a bunch of like that you just don't get like any gold whatsoever, and like you're having a hard time, you have to spend it all on like healing yourself up when shops come by. But at the end of the day, like you could still bypass that by like with good platforming / action skills, as opposed to like Slay the Spire, where if you get bad card draw like 3 turns in a row, like your run's over. So there's that. So all right, that's going to conclude my Skul the Hero Slayer review. Definitely check it out, and it's cheap enough. If you can't afford the price, maybe wait for it to go on sale. Being an indie title, like it might go on sale. It did just release, so I think there was a slight discount on the Switch eShop. I don't know if it's still there. And yeah, definitely check it out. It's a fun little game. So that concludes that. Let's get into quest log. All right, so quest log. is where typically we set a sort of geeky goal for the upcoming week and talk about what goal I had last week and what I worked on and everything. So the goal last week was to work on my Critical Role fan art. I got that done, and I got caught up on editing videos. So sort of twofold there. So very happy about that. Getting all that stuff off my plate. Now, the goal for this week. Twitch unveiled that follower emotes are now a thing. So it used to be that you had to be subbed to a channel to have access to that channel's emotes, and you can use them in any channel. All right, that's still the case. However, there are now 5 emote slots. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, where followers of a channel have access to them for use in that channel specifically. So, for example, for my channel, this means that there will be eventually 5 emotes that, as long as you follow the channel, you don't have to be a sub. You'll have access to those emotes. Subs will still have access to the emotes before. I did move the basic Monty emote into the follower slot, so folks will be able to use it. We can spread the word of the bestest boy across, or open it up to followers, and then subs will to replace that get access. All subs will have access to the Bork emote, and then moved one of the unused emotes into the tier 2 slot. So, but the goal is to come up with 4 more emotes. So I have some ideas already of what I'd like to do, but if you have any particular inclinations or thoughts on what we could do, let me know. Shoot me a message on social media. The links are at 8-Bit Adventures on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Sean at 8-bitadventures.com, or here on Twitch. So ideas that I have are just like very simple ones, like yes, no, hi, maybe a fish emote to go along with all my fishing mini games and stuff. We'll see. So, all right. So yeah, goal is to get 4 of those done. That is in addition to whatever other artwork stuff I've got going on. So yeah. All right, that is going to wrap up this week's episode. Thank you all for joining me. Whether you are a live watcher or an audio listener, thank you very much. If you want to see more content from 8-Bit Adventures, be sure to check out 8-bitadventures.com. Over there, you can find podcast, stream VODs, artwork, comics, more. That is the best place to find the content because it's all in one spot. If you would like to help support that content, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/8bitadventures. Patrons get early access to 8-Bit Adventures comics. They get exclusive access to comics featuring my dog, and some other cool little benefits. Every little bit helps, and you can become a patron for as little as $1 a month. So, which is 20% of the cost of a Twitch subscription. So think about that, folks. Speaking of which, don't forget, if you have Amazon Prime, you get 1 free Twitch subscription a month. That has to be manually renewed every month. So please consider using this on the Twitch channel to help support that. That can get access to more sub emotes. And it just goes right back into the podcast and web host costs and stuff. And finally, Our opening theme is One Up by Professor Shy Guy. You can find his work over at professorshyguy.bandcamp.com. So big thanks to Professor Shy Guy for letting us use One Up for the theme since day one. Super great guy. So thanks again. Big shout out, thank you to all of the patrons, all of the subs. Thank you for your support. And as always, have fun, happy gaming, and enjoy your pie cake.